Now, I've got to be honest with you. I did not join the Sorare platform until Sorare NBA launched. And the reason for that was I found out about Sorare a little while back, but I realized that Sorare football had been in full swing for quite some time. And to get in at that time put me at a significant disadvantage because of the way the tournaments were organized. So I took a pass. But when Sorare NBA came out, I was all excited because I thought, hey, here's a chance to get in on the ground floor, develop with the platform, and give up nothing to anybody else when it came to advantage. I jumped right in, and as a result of that, you guys have been getting tips and tricks from me when it comes to Sorare NBA. But now I'm getting into Sorare football. The primary reason for this is, one, I love the Sorare platform, but two, they now have the cap tournaments and the ETH thresholds available to limited. I never want to invest too much into this. I've put a lot of money into NFTs previously, and I thought, this will be something I try out and maybe I'll grow with it. If I want to invest more later, I will, but I want to stick to a bit of a budget. And having a cap system like they do in Sorare NBA really works for somebody who's on a budget, like myself. So introducing this cap system in Sorare football and offering ETH thresholds even at the limited level has me amped. So as a result of that, you're going to benefit because now I'm going to be giving you information and you tips and tricks to win on the Sorare football platform. And you're probably thinking, why should I listen to you? I've been playing Sorare football for quite some time. Well, even if you haven't been playing under a cap. And cap systems and cap exploitation is something I've always been good at when it comes to daily fantasy sports, things like DraftKings, any sort of system where you're given a limited number of points to spend and you want to get the most out of it. I excel at that. And I've got 5 tips that I can give you today that's going to help you when it comes to, 1, hitting thresholds. And that's going to be key because I know a lot of you don't want to play for that. But 2, getting the most out of your team. So a couple of these tips will really work on any of their tournament structures, but 3 of them are specifically geared toward hitting thresholds. So let's just get into it. I'm going to begin my top 5 tips for playing Sorare football under the cap with the first 2 that apply to basically all of the tournament structures. These aren't just threshold specific tips. They work on every tournament available to you on Sorare football. And the first is moving on up players. Now what I call moving on up players are players who have been moved from one team to another, regardless of how it happens. Could be on loan, could be through a trade, could be free agency. However they end up on the new team, if it's a team that's significantly better than the team they were on, you want to target those players. Because if they go from mediocre or poor teams to a competitive one, and they're expected to start on this new team, they're going to have opportunities available to them that just didn't happen when they were on that weaker side. It's almost a guarantee that their current L15 value is lower than it should be. First off, they prove themselves in a less than ideal situation. So obviously they've got the skills to compete. Now they will be surrounded by far better players in an improved situation and have way more opportunities to make decisive level plays. Your decisive scores should improve. They should increase, which means that L15 number should slowly climb. But until it does, they're going to give you fantastic opportunities to post big numbers, especially if you're playing them in a cap system. So look for those players. And then the reverse is true also. Look for players who are slumming it. This is my hint number 2. So these are players who are essentially too good for the leagues they're now playing, and in most cases, this happens on loan. They're on loan from some of the top teams in, say, Europe to get them additional playing time. For example, when a team like Newcastle United loans a player to a club in the MLS, you can be damn sure that that player's time on the pitch, his L15 scores, and his card price will all increase. So those are players you definitely want to have on the roster. Not only will they help you win in a cap tournament situation, but they will also earn you additional income because the price is sure to shoot as soon as they start climbing. That gives you the option to say, well, let's say in a threshold situation, do I want to use them to win that additional, in the limited case, $5 worth of ETH for a few game weeks, or is it better to sell them at, who knows, maybe a $30 profit right off the bat and move on from that and find somebody else to put in your roster? Either way, it's a win-win for you. So when you see these players that are on loan from powerhouse leagues to a almost feeder or growth league, take advantage, right? Because those players generally have the skills to excel in that new league they're in. Now let's move on to number 3. And number 3 is my set it and forget it players. Now this is more specific to playing under a threshold system when you're looking to hit a threshold. Having players on your roster that are practically guaranteed to get you the same points each and every game week are key components to consistently reaching the threshold limit. You can't just have boom or bust players, although that's something I always push on the Sorare NBA side. If you're trying to hit a specific threshold, a specific number every week, then that's really not what you're after. You need a few guys on your roster that you can count on to give you a certain amount of points so that your boom or bust players, when they do go off, are guaranteed to give you a high enough value that you're going to break that threshold. For example, Illy Sanchez is a great example, and he's already on my roster. If you examine his last year's games, in more than 2/3 of his games, he finished between 44 and 64 points, so a 20-point swing. In almost half his games, he finished between 50 and 59, right in there. Currently, he has an L15 value of 45. So just by that, he should actually go up, right? His L15 should increase. But even if it does, it doesn't really matter because he should never really reach an L15 value that's too high. You should always have him as an option on your SO5 lineup, right? Your SO5 lineup, because he's never going to give you too high of a point value to break, say, that 240 barrier, but he's always going to give you somewhere in around what he's worth. So I can place him almost every single week in my roster and know that he's probably going to give me 50 some odd points, and I should be okay with that. And really, when you're looking at this threshold limit game, unless you're willing to spend money every single week to keep the most possible pop players on your roster, if you're on a budget like I am, you really want to win maybe half the time. I'd say 50% of the time would be a pretty good return if you're looking to hit that threshold. And a player like this will definitely help you get there because 50% of the time, he's giving you 50 something, which is what you're kind of hoping for. So those set it and forget it players are key to hitting the threshold a high percentage of times over the course of the season. Then my next tip is look for a bargain goalkeeper. And this one's key when it comes to hitting your threshold limit. You've got to target the best starting goalkeeper you can find at the lowest L15 value. Goalkeepers basically have the simplest path to breaking 60 points. A clean sheet will probably get them there, right? That's your ticket to your 60. So if you can find a starting goalkeeper with an L15 value of around 40 or even less, a clean sheet will have you well on your way to reaching the ETH threshold. Someone else on your roster could even maybe shit the bed, and provided that goalkeeper came through for you and got you that like 20, 25 point bump, that could be enough for you to actually hit your threshold. So goalkeepers are really key components here when it comes to aiming for threshold level type wins. And I think that's something that doesn't hold true for the previous tournament structure that didn't have caps, because you had a lot of people building lineups with goalkeepers basically that aren't playing, with like backup goalkeepers, and then stacking the roster with studs in order to hit a particular level. You can't do that anymore. 4 studs is going to put you over your limit. And good luck, all 4 of them hitting, otherwise you're out of luck. Like that's just how it works. So you're basically going to have to play a goalkeeper. But stud goalkeepers aren't necessarily the way to go, because if you got a goalkeeper that averages around 60 points, then they basically have to get a clean sheet or you're going to find yourself in the negative. So look for those bargain goalkeepers that you know are going to get the start and have a chance at a clean sheet. Even if they don't get it, they're still got a low enough L15 value that if your other guys perform, you've got a chance of hitting that limit. That's one of the key ones. And then the last one, and to me this is the most important, is what I call double up. You got to double up. And what this means is when targeting players for specific positions on your roster that aren't star players, right? I expect a lot of you are going to build rosters with, say, 1 or 2 studs on them and then a bunch of mediocre guys. Look for teams with a solid group of players at that position and add at least 2 of them to your roster, right? You want to target players from specific position groups from the same team. So a couple of defenders, a couple of midfielders, a couple of forwards, depending on where you want to put your studs in your SO5 roster. For example, an SO5 team that includes a star goalkeeper and a star forward may only leave you with enough cap space for mediocre defenders and midfielders. Having multiple options at those positions from a competitive team will allow you to choose whichever starting player has the lowest L15 value in order to continue playing your star forward and goalkeeper every game week. Because what you got to factor in here is if you are playing studs, and occasionally they're going to go off for, say, 3 or 4 games. If they do, their L15 value is going to increase to a point where you're going to need some options at the non-star positions. And the best way to do that is to say, find a team that's defensively focused with 3 mediocre defensemen on it that generally all give you about the same value. They'll peak at different times, but who cares? What you're looking for there is, let's say, 3 defenders that all cost in around the, say, 40 mark. Their L15 score is 40. And if that's the case, and one of them has a great game and it, bumps them up to, say, 45, and another one has an okay game and sits in around the 40, but then the third one was a little off that game and drops to 38, with all 3 of them peaking at around, say, the same number of, let's say their peak point is 65 or something, you might as well play the 38 because he gives you the exact same chances as the other 2 to peak. And for the most part, that leaves you a little additional space to fit, say, one of your studs that has gone up recently. So doubling up on your mediocre positions, your extra positions, or even your star positions can help you. Because if you've got, say, 2 stud forwards and one of them's had just been on fire and jumps up to a 66 value or a 70 value, and the other guy has just the same potential, but has been sitting around 56, you get to play the 56 and have the same possibility of booming. So you got to double up. If you don't, you're basically just throwing darts at a dartboard and hoping to hit a bullseye. And I mean, you can play that way, right? You can just pick and choose, look at the matchups, go with that, and hope your guys pop. But I don't think you're going to be consistently breaking the threshold if that's your plan, unless you're constantly buying players that fit the perfect situation every single week, or you have a massive roster already. Some of you do. I'm probably not talking to those people, but for anybody who wants to play this on a budget, who is just getting into Sorare football, or has a little bit of hesitancy about how to play this cap system, there you go. There's my top 5 tips right now, and they're going to keep coming from this point on. Till next time.